Good evening. Today we have a wonderful opportunity sitting in the hotel room in Bamberg, a small town in Bavaria in Germany, and to interview well-known German falconer and falconry literature bibliophil Karl-Heinz Gersmann. And we will be very pleased to hear his story about his way into falconry world. Please, we listen to you attentively.
Okay, so going very back in time, I started falconry when I was 14 years old. I knew it before because I saw, I think, a little movie on TV. At that time we had no own TV. My friend had a TV because his parents had a guest house, a little guest house, and that was the TV. I saw that movie. In that time, you have to know, people were playing outside. There was no TV, as I told you. There was no mobile phone. There was no computer. There was nothing. So we were playing outside, and I liked to play outside. And we discovered the world. We played on rivers. We shooting birds and took birds out of the nest. Sometimes there was a goshawk we raised or a kestrel. So I liked to be outside. That was my world. So I grew up, and I was 14 years old. Suddenly a man with a goshawk passed my road. So I was excited to see that man. My God, this is a falconer I've only seen one time on TV, and it was a little bit time ago. So I followed him and introduced myself to him. And he was very friendly, a young man at that time. And so I met him, and he was my first mentor. So I visit him nearly every day because I like that so much. What he was doing, and he gave me the chance to learn a little bit, handle the bird, and go out with him hawking. And that was the beginning of falconry. Then I grew up a little bit, and when I remember right, there was a time falconry was not the main focus in my life because girls coming up to my life, so that was a little bit more important to me. But very, very early, this inflammation for falconry came back, and so I started falconry doing by myself, and I flew my first goshawk on rabbits. Then I studied automotive engineering, and after that I had to move because the automotive industry was in the German south, Mercedes, Porsche, so I like to work for some of these companies. Mm-hmm. I never worked for them as an employee because I started in another company, a supplier, and I became an expert for exhaust systems, and that was a good thing in my life because there were not so many, and I became a good expert, I think. So I worked for them in that company, changed to another one, and in '85 I founded my own company. So I was developing for them, exhaust system, did a lot for racing, for Formula One. I produced all these manifolds for them and things like this. And parallel, I started my career as a falconer in South Germany. To my surprise, there were no rabbits in the area I was grown up. There were millions and millions of rabbits. We fought against them, and there was an area suddenly for them in Swabian. They call rabbit hares. This is different to the north. So I said, when I asked first, are here rabbits? Yeah, they said, yeah, we have hares, but there were no hares, in my meaning rabbits. So I had nearly nothing to hunt. I had no goshawk down there. So I got a falcon because they were partridges. And my wish was to have a nice dog. And I read Renswaller's book in that time as a beginner. There I had no sponsor, I must say. So I had to learn it or develop my knowledge as a game hawker. That was my target, by my own and by books. So I read the book of Renswalder, and for Renswalder, Falconry dog was a Münsterländer, kleiner Münsterländer. So this little Münsterländer became my first dog. So you can see a photograph here showing me with my little Münsterländer. And you see, in that time, everything comes back. Young men had beards like nowadays. So I got my Münsterländer and was well equipped with everything. And I started then go hawking, tried to make contacts to people who had hawking grounds, this hunting grounds. This is very important in Germany, to have a hunting ground, to go out hunting or doing falconry, because without a hunting ground you cannot go. You cannot go somewhere like I do now in Canada, wherever you want. So I made contact to the hunters. I made my hunter's exam, meet some people, get in friendship, and they were interested to see falconry, my low-level game hawking falconry. But yeah, I started to succeed, and so it develops and develops. And over the time, I had the opportunity to meet nice German falconers. For me, very, very important, high-brained falconers. And the first one I met in North Germany was Eckhard Schormeyer. And he brought me over to Scotland to do grouse hawking, because I was reading all the articles about that guys went over to do grouse hawking. So I asked him, and he took me with him to Scotland. So that was a nice experience for me. And I met all the famous falconers like Roger and Umberto Caproni, Christian Saar, and so on and so on. Yeah, but with the 80s, the partridge start to decline, and partridges are my main quarry, the most quarry I love. I love partridge hawking. So in my area, the partridge declined and declined and declined. Nobody knew really why, and nobody knows. Yeah, probably some knew why it declines, but not so easy. All the factors put together which are responsible for the decline of the partridges. So I followed the partridges all over Europe. I went nearly to any country, even to the Baltic states. I was in Lithuania, I was in Latvia, I was in Hungary, and well, it became more and more complicated to hunt them. I had a period before I went to Scotland where I had a very good friend in Hungary, and my friend Lazzi invited me to come. So we had very, very good pheasant hawking down there. He was a falconer through and through, and he was on a big farm in Hungary, 30,000 hectares. He was responsible there for the hunting. And so we went out, and he knew where the wild pheasants were. You have to be very careful, because in Hungary they release pheasants, thousands and thousands, like in England. I saw later on, like in England. And but he knew the areas where the wild pheasants were. So we hunted in the Puszta, very, very ideal area to do game hawking, and we had really, really good hawking there and good fun. So then later on, via my book collecting, I met Ken Carney, made contact to Ken Carney, and the first time I met him was when he was in, I don't know where, but I invited him to my house, and we were talking about books and so on, because he had this big archive, and I had quite a good collection of falconry books. So he liked to see them. And from this contact on, a really, really deep friendship developed. And we were talking about my passion for game hawking, and I asked him because I read about the American hawking, and for me that must have been a dream. What I read in all these articles, so fantastic, and I asked Kent to tell me about the situation there. And so he said, well, it is like you said, and like your impression is. So he said, if you want to do it, and this is what I told him between the lines. So he said to me, come over and have a look, and then make your decision probably to come over. That was for me a far step, because I did not really think going over to America or Canada to do hawking there. But he invited me, and the first time I went over, seeing his archive, was in 2006, when the meeting was in Kearney, Nebraska. So I was there for not quite a while. It was 2 weeks I was over there. First week in his archive, and then we drove down to Kearney with his truck, and I attended this field meet and met some nice people there. So they were quite relaxed, doing falconry a little bit a different way, like we do. Like you saw here today, we are structured, everything is organized well. So in there was different, free, and, well, people go out, fly their birds somewhere, good places they knew. So I thought, well, that is nice. And then Kent said, I said, Kent, yes, I want to come over and do it here. And he said, you know what, go back, come back, and we make a little tour through some different countries or states in America, some provinces in Canada, and then I will introduce you to some people, and then you will see probably what is the best place to do it. So we went to Washington, state Washington, I met some falconers there, and then we went to Alberta, where I met Mark Williams, became a very good friend after to me, and is still a good friend. And then we went to Saskatchewan, where I met my friend Jim Crowshoes and Bob Rayfuse, all falconers well known there. There are not many. The club has only 18 members, and they had their 50th anniversary of the club this year. But very engaged people and very nice people. So and Jim said to me, if you come over, I will help you. And that impressed me, and he was a really nice man, very nice man, still very good friend. And then I said, but Jim, it's not so easy for me to arrange all this. He said, you know what, I do it all for you. So Jim organized the house for me. Later he bought the first car for me, because I needed a car. Just to rent it was too expensive, because I was there for 3 months now. I was retired, I sold my company, so I was in a way retired, and I had time, and I wanted to do it right, and to go over with doing all this effort. This is not worth to do it for 3 weeks. That was the maximum time. I was on holiday in Scotland on my hawking tours, or probably in Hungary. Could not stay longer, but this time, first time, I was there for 3 months. So Jim organized everything. The only thing I had to do, bring my things, and bring my 2 English pointers over. And Jim organized me a falcon, because you cannot bring the birds to Canada because for the quarantine requirements. And well, that was a little bit the risk. The birds. Jim could not train it for me. He had no time. So another guy trained it tried to train it for me. So I got the bird, and there was a little bit of disappointment, because it did not work. The bird did not fly well, nothing. But I had time. The first time in my life, I had really a lot of time to train a bird, calm down, and that was good for me and for the bird. So at the end, it worked very fine. And I was so surprised to see the country and how free it is, how nice the people were. Imagine, I came to a farmer and his wife, they have never seen me before. I knocked at the door and I explained to them, I'm Karl from Germany and I want to do hawking on your ground. Would you allow me? And they say, what? You want to play hockey in our hills? No, I said, hawking. So maybe depending on my bad English, but we cleared it up and I explained what it is. I said, oh, that's interesting, we never heard that. And then this couple said to me, or the farmer said to me, I will make you a little sketch showing you all our land, the borders and the gates. They can in, leave it open, the cattle are in a different place. And unbelievable. I said, my God, I'm in heaven. And it is falconry heaven. So, and when I left, he said, are you alone here? I said, yes, my wife will come in 2 weeks. I'm the first time I'm alone here. And then they said, what about coming for dinner tonight, having supper together? Never seen me before. So, totally different to any other things I have seen before. And that was really nice. And so I started there, and in that time they had masses and masses of partridge. I think over there at this area, the prairies, northern prairies, America and Canada, nowadays they have the biggest stock of our European partridge over there. We have nearly none in the whole Europe, but they are still, and they have sharp-tailed grounds, which for me is the most challenging quarry, and they have millions and millions of ducks. So, heaven on earth for a falconer. And this is what I do until now. I do not falconry anymore here because I have a hunting ground now, no partridges, no pheasants, no hares, just wild boar and roe deer, but I don't want to hunt them. So I go to Canada still every year, and that's fine.
You mentioned that one of the first books was the book by Renz Waller, which to help to inspire you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, for falconry. But how your bibliophilus activity was growing? What was the stimulus?
Yeah, I always liked old books. I do a little bit drawing, and I like illustrated books. So Renz Waller is not really a manual to become a falconer. This is a storybook, tells his story, but you cannot really learn falconry out of it. So I thought by myself, in the history, there were falconry everywhere in Europe, and there must have been the experts, probably with much better knowledge than we had in that time. So I started to look at the old books, and the first very, very expensive book I bought was the German translation of Frederick II, written by Arnold Willemsen, and this is the Bible for me until now. I think many falconers, because after that I bought little libraries from people who died, and I got these books back from their library, and they were untouched. But I think for me, no other falconer explained so detailed how to train a bird and how to handle it. So all in these paragraphs, you should do that, going with the bird through a door, take care that the wings are not flapping and damaging. And all these details, when you call him on a creans, take care that there is no grasshopper on the ground who catches the creans and pull the bird down before he gets to the fist. All this experience you have to make as a beginner, or have to take care of not to make the mistake. And so that was my first book. That was so unbelievable expensive. It cost me, I think, in that time, 460 Deutsche Mark. That was, as a student in that time, a book 30 Deutsche Mark was very expensive. So, but I bought that book. So, and that was the first really good falconry book I got. And then I went to the libraries and read all the books, not all, but many, of all the classics. If it is Tourberville, or is it Franchier from France, or is it Dacusia, all these authors I've written. And then when I founded my company in '85, then I had the money to buy the original books because they were quite much more expensive. No, the very first one, other expensive book was before I had my company. That was Falconry in the British Isles with this beautiful, beautiful plates in it, hand colored and drawn by Broderick. I was fascinating. And then I went the first time to a book fair in Stuttgart, where I since that time are every year. And there I saw that book, you know, and it was offered by a dealer from the Netherlands. It cost 3,500 Deutsche Mark. How I know now, much too much for that time, but I was running around and looking at that book, you know, had it in my hands, but 3,500 Deutsche Mark, that was 2.5 the wages of a month I had in that time, you know, so quite a little money. So my hands get very wet. I get really sweating, you know. I wanted that book, and this 3,500 Deutsche Mark was all I had on my bank account and my wife. So I phoned and said, darling, here's a beautiful book of Falconry. You might not believe how nice it is and how beautiful. And I said to her, can I buy that? And I want to ask you, because it costs a little money. And she said, how much? And I said, 3,500 Deutsche Mark.
Silence.
Are you there? Are you still there? She said, 3,500 Deutsche Mark. So at the end, she said yes, and I bought, that was my very, very first old book on falconry. And yeah, so I became a collector. And coming back to the time when I had my company, I got a little money to buy all the originals. So I start really collecting. And over the years, this is from the first book on, this 40 years ago, I put together quite a good library, I think, with many, many really rare books, around about 1,000 or so. And really the biggest treasure is the Beitsbüchlein. You probably might know, do not know what it is. The Beitsbüchlein, I have the second edition of it, was the first ever printed hunting book in the world. That was printed in 1480. And this deals with the training of goshawks, flying goshawks, and training of dogs. Very, very famous book. So I was able, last year, I was waiting, I knew somebody who had that book. He became a good friend too. And I was able to buy from his Inherents, this book. Last year, and this is the second edition. It's from 1497. So really a treasure. Only one copy in private hands, and one is in the library of Munich. So I have some of these books, and yeah, I love them. You know, I have a library where all the famous falconers from all over the world, I collect worldwide, are brought together in one room, you know. And this is a special feeling for me if you sit in that room, surrounded with all these nice books. I read them. I read all of them, or nearly all of them. And I cannot read Japanese books, but I asked friends to translate, and yeah. So that's it. That's the book collecting. And this is a little bit of hunting too, you know.
Yes.
Finding, following.
Yes.
Shooting.
Yes.
So, and bring it home.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And yeah, well, I think it's quite big. I think probably the biggest in Europe in private hands, just dealing with falconry. This is a special library falconry.
Mm-hmm. But side by side, did you try to buy books on birds of prey or wider subjects of wildlife, or just only falconry?
No, for me,
yeah.
birds of prey belong and Falconry books belong together. So I collect books on the main quarry for birds too as well.
Okay.
So I have a lot of ornithological books, all the classics in ornithology and in birds of prey, in the field of birds of prey, and of course to such a library all the secondary literature belongs to it. So all the bibliographies and everything. So you can read about the books. What is that book? You know, if you buy a book, you need a good bibliography to check is it complete or not. Because in the past there were some big collectors, and from them or from some of them are really good catalogs existing. The most important is the Schwert from the Schwert collection, and he had the biggest collection ever. Unbelievable. You never can put a collection like this together nowadays, because these books he could buy in that time, before the Second World War or right after the 1900s, they are gone for a collector, because they are in public libraries or they are in museums, and some will never come up on the market again. So yeah, well, this is, I would say, a complete library, you know, with all, as I said, the side literature. So if I read a book and there's a reference of something reminds me of a book, this is all there. I can go to the shelf, take it out, and here it is, and read what this author has just mentioned, and then I start reading, you know, and so it's really nice and for me fulfilling to start reading, and then yeah, taking all the interesting things out of it, and find sometimes some new things they mention. I wrote an article for our magazine about hunting. A Falconry book is hidden in a 4-volume book about hunting, and that was uncovered. So I have time now and read the books, and so somebody, his name is Bechstein, he opened a forestry academy, because he was interested to educate foresters, which was not the case before. So he founded an academy where they teach hunting and all the fields around that, you know, trees and what belongs to that, and falconry. And in these 4 volumes was published from, I think, 1802 until 1821. So it took a long time to produce a book in that time. And in these different volumes, there are hidden parts about the falconry horses are described. How, what did the falconers wear in that time? What was the uniform? What hat did they wear? So I put this all together from these 4 volumes. So you read about, you have to read about nearly 2,000 pages, go through it, and here's a complete manual book about falconry. So yeah, these are these little surprises sometimes coming up if you read the book. Now you know, when you asked me before, I have published a book about falconry history, together with my friend Oliver Grimm from the archive, not the archive, from the
Center for Archaeology.
Center for Archaeology in Schleswig, or better, I must say, he published this with me because he did the main work, and he is the scientist, you know. So I met him at the occasion that they had a little workshop about falconry in Schleswig, and we made contact. I did not know him before, so we were talking about falconry, and he about his archaeology, because they found in the graves, they found goshawks or whatever, you know, and they do not really know, in this case, was it falconry, or was it just a symbol in the grave when they put probably a dead goshawk in, and we start discussing, and I have read some articles about scientists, about falconry history, and some were writing about the theory where probably was the origin of falconry. And I said to Oliver, we were not per du. In Germany you say Sie. I said, Herr Grimm, I have read quite some articles about falconry from your course.